I'm Chris Carter, the Locked On Steelers podcast. Today on the show, we'll take you inside the Steelers locker room to show you a team that doesn't look like it's panicking just yet, but are they showing the right sense of urgency before a huge game against the Colts? We'll examine that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, Steelers fans, you're tuning into this show. You're trying to see how things are actually looking as the Steelers play a crucial game against the Colts after dropping two terrible games. And if we're looking around right now, the whole town has been pretty restless. There's been lots of talk about the direction of the team. Should they fire Mike Tomlin? All those kinds of discussions. And it's after those two terrible losses that I've said on this very show, the questions are warranted after loss like that. These were unprecedented two weeks of failure that blew an opportunity for the Steelers to claim a chance at being right behind the 1 seed race. If they had won those two games, instead of being 7-6, they'd be 9-4, tied with the Miami Dolphins, a half game of the Ravens in the 1 seed position, and feeling pretty good about themselves right now. Confidence would be at an all-time high. There's a lot of things that could be going right for them right now, but that's not where they're at. They're 7-6, and they're one of right now 6 different teams that have 7-6 as their record. They have the tiebreaker that puts them ahead of all of them, but all that will change if they lose to the Colts this upcoming weekend after these two terrible losses. So now you're fighting for your playoff lives. Should that be panic mode for the Steelers? Well, went into the Steelers locker room yesterday, and it doesn't seem like it is. And I don't know if that's a good thing or if it's a sign that things aren't going to, if things start to go bad on Saturday against the Colts, if anything will happen to turn the game around. To get to my point here, I talked to a few players in the locker room on Tuesday when we got in there. Here was Broderick Jones, and he's just a rookie. But I wanted to see, how is the rookie handling the situation? How does he see the leaders around him talking about this kind of stuff? Here's Broderick Jones in the Steelers locker room when I asked him those questions.
There's a lot of talk after last week about messages and leaders, players need to step up. Who are some of the guys in the offense who might have given you guys messages over
Everybody has an opinion. Coach always leaves the floor open for anybody who has anything to say or want to address. So, everybody has the floor, but, those offensive leaders like the older guys like Isaac, Kenny, Mitch, people like that, they always got some, just like an input to tell us or, something that we need to work on, like as a whole or something. So, man, he's a great guy. He's intense, he doesn't show it a lot because he's so calm, but you can just tell by his demeanor and everything. So I get that feeling because I come from a program like that. So it's kind of it's nice, just knowing he can get amped up, but he doesn't, because he wants to keep it calm and cool, just and save it for Saturday. So.
Is messaging still the same? Still coming here with the same mindset?
It's always the same mindset, for us. It's nothing changes. At the end of the day, it's still football. He's gonna try and get us pumped up each and every week, no matter who we're playing.
So his way of ramping things up might not be getting loud about it, but might be challenge you guys in different ways.
Yeah, he'll definitely challenge us in different ways. He challenged the O-line. Each and every time I see him, he wants us to be, as perfect as we can be. Everything's not going to be perfect, but, just to the best of our ability. He always telling us what he wants, and, we always try and do the best we can to, just to prove him right. So.
So there you have Broderick Jones. And it sounds a lot like, he's saying like nothing's changing as far as the message. The message stays the same. You have to meet the expectations, and Coach Tomlin is pushing them in certain directions. I'm sure Pat Meyer is doing the same thing. And I kind of get that sense for respect and saying like, hey, the message is still you guys need to get the job done. We got a challenge this week. Let's meet the challenge. And as bad as the last 2 weeks have been, the Steelers have met the challenge several times this year already. It's why they have a winning record. It's why they would be a playoff team if the playoffs started today. But they still have to address some things. They still have to change things. And this kind of goes back to what's been getting said around the team as they've dealt with these losses. And last week, Deontay Johnson said some things that caught people's eyes as far as him talking about it, admitting like, hey, maybe we took a team too lightly. Well, he had a similar quote yesterday, where I thought it was kind of telling when he brought this up. Here's Deontay Johnson. We were asking him questions, and he gives the kind of same note here to start. He's like, hey, we're not panicking. We're staying focused. It's about the work. If we do the work, we'll see the results. You hear that? And at the end there, this quote here, listen specifically for what he says, because it's going to be something that will perk your ears up. Here's Deontay Johnson in the Steelers locker room.
Has there been a sense of urgency, or a message with a sense of urgency as far as the offensive leaders and you guys in the room coming together?
Yeah, but I mean, our focus is just go out there and make plays and just start fast. I mean, just, like I said, all this starting fast, or what can we do to change the offense? Like, it's simple, bro. Just go practice and go play hard. There's nothing crazy about the whole situation. Just go play, and then, what I'm saying, your effort's going to show.
What has Mike Tomlin been like as a coach? Has he changed anything after these 2 games, or challenged you guys in any different ways to push harder?
He challenged us to give more, you know what I'm saying? Because he know we can play better than what we've been playing. I feel like we've just been playing down nothing against the 2 teams we play. We just play down to their level the past week. Like I said, once we do that, it's hard to recover. So I feel like once we get back out in front where we normally be, we're gonna be fine.
2 more.
There you have it. Deontay Johnson saying he feels like they played down to their level. And that's the very thing we've been talking about as far as how the Steelers are getting themselves into trouble with some of these teams that they shouldn't be getting in trouble with. And he even says that Mike Tomlin's saying, I need more from you. I need more from you so that we're not in those situations. That's very interesting to hear from Deontay Johnson, and that this playing down to opponents factor. It's something that people bring up all the time with Mike Tomlin. And listen, Mike Tomlin has a record of 134-1 against teams with losing records. It's not like he always loses to opponents to losing opponents and bad teams, but the Steelers have this season, at least in the past, especially in the past 2 weeks, allow themselves to toil with teams that they should not be toiling with. And that's the problem there. And that word toil was used by Minkah Fitzpatrick in a different tone that I think strikes at the problem here. Because again, it's not like the Steelers didn't know. We talked to players, we talked to coaches, we've seen everybody. They weren't surprised by anything the Patriots, the Cardinals did. It wasn't that they didn't prepare the right way to get ready for the game. They didn't execute on game day. They didn't have the right they didn't have the right tone in the game. They missed obvious and easy layup opportunities to take over those games, and they can't afford to miss those moments. And I think it goes back to what Minkah Fitzpatrick said after the Patriots game, and how that addresses the team. If the players are preparing for what teams are doing, but they aren't following through, what's the difference that has to happen there? Minkah Fitzpatrick said, quote, I think too many people don't want to toil for it. They just want to walk out here and think that they're going to make plays and think that they're going to perform at a high level. I think we have more people, or I think we need to have more people who want to work for it and not expect it to be handed to them. And that was a tone that I thought was very strong coming out of that game. Minkah Fitzpatrick, obviously a leader, obviously a person in the locker room that you want to galvanize people and to challenge people. And we've seen him challenge people plenty of times in his career already. The Steelers need more of that right now, especially with all the different things that they need to clean up moving forward. Cam Heyward, I asked him specifically about what Minkah said and how that plays into how the Steelers have taken this approach. And I've also asked Cam Heyward, how have you seen Mike Tomlin handle this situation? Because he's been with Mike Tomlin as long as anybody. In fact, he's been with Mike Tomlin longer than anybody on the roster right now. And so he probably has a better sense of where Tomlin is right now compared to other times where they faced adversity. I'll get to what Cam said on the other side of the break here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, because I think this was the more clear message that I thought came out about that he put out there about where the team's at and what has to happen this week if they're going to turn things around. We'll get to that in a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We still have a lot to discuss. But first, we want to remind you this episode is sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is the #1 sportsbook in America, and as the NFL season is getting ready for the playoffs, there's no better place to put your action down than FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets with simply winning a $5 moneyline bet. That's right, just $150 back if your team wins when you bet on their money line. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use to bet on spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. There's so many different ways to win with FanDuel Sportsbook and so many different sports. It's not just the NFL. You could look at the NBA, the NHL, college basketball. The bowl seasons are coming back for college football. You think you got some key matchups that you think you can win money on? That's where you go to FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America, and stake your claim. And again, if you're a new customer, guess what? You get a really big chance here to get that $150 in bonus bets back for just simply hitting a $5 bet. And to take advantage of that, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, and that'll get you ready to take on the rest of the NFL season and get you ready as the rest of sports also kicks into high gear. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get the deals that you won't want to miss. And at FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our discussion here because, as I said, you hear the tone from Broderick Jones. You hear the tone from Deontay Johnson. And these don't seem like guys that are like, propped up and being like this is do or die week. It doesn't sound like that. And it makes you wonder, is that a problem? Like if the Steelers lose this game, they're in a position where they have to win out after this game to have a chance to make the playoffs, or not a chance to make. No, I think actually if they lose this game, they do have to win out, because the Colts are a team that you can't lose to. The Colts and the Bengals are two games that you have to win. I think with their current standing, they can afford to lose one of the Seahawks and Ravens games and still be in a good position. But if they lose to the Colts or the Bengals, those are 2 7-6 teams that they cannot afford to give either of those teams a leg up. And with all the teams that are struggling at 7-6 right now, you have to be able to fight through and beat those teams, put as many of them beneath you in the standings as possible when you get those shots. So I thought, asking these questions, it'd get more of a sense of urgency, but this team just seems focused and just saying, hey, we're not worried about what ifs and things outside. We're worried about what's right in front of us while getting things right in practice. Cam Heyward, who, by the way, practiced on Tuesday, typically a day where that would be like a Wednesday on a normal Steelers practice week. Remember, this game is Saturday, so everything's kind of moved up a day. Cam Heyward practiced, and he said, hey, I sat enough this year when I was on injured reserve. I want to show you what Cam Heyward sounded like, the captain of the team, the guy that kind of sets the message for everybody else. We asked him about him seeing a sense of urgency here and what he thought of Minkah Fitzpatrick's comments and how he's seen Mike Tomlin handle the Steelers since the last loss, especially going into such a huge game. Here's Cam Heyward from the Steelers locker room.
Today, didn't you?
Yes.
Why? I mean, you usually get the first day off, don't you?
I've had plenty of time off, feeling pretty good, and training the right way.
It had nothing to do with setting a tone, a leadership tone?
It's part of it, but it is what it is. I just got to be more there for my guys.
And what about the perception that there's dissension in this locker room?
Screw perception. We got a job to do. We lost our last two, but we're on to Indianapolis.
So there's no dissension.
Minkah has pretty strong words about guys needing to step up after the last game, saying some guys, think they're going to win just because they're wearing the black and gold. How do you guys challenge that in the locker room to the players that you do want more out from?
We need to step up. I don't think anybody's safe from that. You look at it as we gave up 21 points on defense. That's way too many. Any defender who thinks that they're not responsible for it, man, I think that's doing everybody a disservice. We all have a job to do. We all have a part to play. And we've got to be better because of it.
What is Mike Tomlin like in these parts of the year? You guys have kind of been at crossroads before where you got to turn it on and make a playoff run, win a division. What is he like in these times?
He's consistent. I don't have to, think otherwise and think he's, plotting some different course. I think it's just staying ahead, staying afloat, and allowing us to get better.
So here's the thing that I have about that, the consistency part that Cam Heyward preaches right there. This is, I think that there's a merit to that, to saying, hey, we're your job and you have to do your job. And again, that's the bottom line here. The Steelers aren't losing these games because they have to completely change who they are. They're losing these games because they're not doing the stuff that's right in front of them. They're not winning simple matchups. Diontae KZ not making an interception when he's put in the perfect position to make it and allowing a touchdown to be thrown right past him. Things like that. That's where the Steelers have to step up. And I think that that's where the challenge is clear. You hear it from Cam Heyward when he's talking there. These guys aren't going to be babied. They're not going to be, Mike Tomlin's not going to check up on them and say and make sure they're doing every little thing every little time. He's not going to micromanage every little second there, but he is going to challenge them and say, hey, I need you to meet this bar because you're a professional. And that's something that we talked about after the game when I talked about with Michael Smith, former ESPN media member who now is with Amazon. I was talking with him and he made this observation. He's like, I think Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL because he challenges guys to meet the standard. He challenges guys to rise up to it, but he's not going to baby them. But sometimes there's players who don't respond to that kind of coaching. And what do you do in those situations? And it seems like right now the response to that is keep challenging them the same way. And that's where I think that this could get dangerous for the Steelers, is that if this isn't heard, this is the chance for this is the chance for the Steelers to say, hey, no, we do buy into things. We've been messing up. We can clear this up. But if that message isn't heard, if there isn't a response from the players that aren't really leaders right now to step up and improve in their roles, that could be the sign that things fall off for the first time at the end of the year, to put the Steelers at maybe even having a losing record for the first time since 2003. And I think that's where the challenge is coming from the leaders, and key among them, Cam Heyward, TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick. But the team also needs new leaders to emerge. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's become that guy. He stepped into that role. He's a vocal leader. He's an on-the-field leader. He's an off-the-field leader. He does all the things he's supposed to do. You know about Watt. You know about Hayward. And I think other role guys like Alex Highsmith, they've come along. I think Patrick Peterson at least has become a good veteran. If you don't believe me that Patrick Peterson's been playing much better this year, go back and look at some of the film work by Nick Farabaugh, our buddy at SteelersNow.com. He's pointing that out, that Patrick Peterson's actually playing very well lately. But they need guys like that on the offensive side of the ball. And I think, that's where some new leaders must arise very soon for the Steelers. And they don't have to be superstars, but set the tone. Be the person that people get behind on the offensive side of the ball. Is there a guy like that? It doesn't seem like it right now. And I think it's very clear. Deontay Johnson isn't that guy. He's not the lead. He could be a playmaker, and we've seen him be a playmaker, but he's not the guy that's going to galvanize the troops and everyone get behind. And if you go back to that clip where I showed Broderick Jones, when I asked him about leadership, who did he mention? He specifically mentioned Isaac Seumalo, Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky. It was very interesting that he didn't say Najee Harris. Granted, Najee Harris didn't practice on Tuesday officially, and maybe that was because of that. And he's quoted Najee Harris a lot this year as being a leader who's set up a lot of the meetings. So that there are guys there. But I also think that Pat Frymuth could be in that conversation of offensive leaders. But there has to be people who step forward and become those leaders for the offense if this group is going to take a step forward. And this is part of the challenge that I think comes back to Mike Tomlin. I get the coaching style. I get the approach and how it's worked for him throughout his whole career. But he has to get some guys on offense, and not just one, but at least two guys who can be the people that say, "Hey, get behind us. We're gonna make this happen." And he has to develop those leaders very soon. If not this season, it has to be manifested by next season, or you're never going to see progress there. And let's be real. what gets the defense through so many of its toughest moments? It's the leaders. It's Minkah Fitzpatrick. Even when he was on the sideline, I think it was the Packers game where he was the one telling Terrell Austin, hey, let's switch to this defense for the last play of the game because we wanted to, no, I think it was the Titans. No, it was the Packers game. There's so many close games this year. It's ridiculous. But you get my point. Minkah Fitzpatrick, even when he wasn't on the field, was being a leader. TJ Watt is a leader. Cam Heyward is a leader. Carry the flag. Get the guys behind you in that effort. And then but on top of that, the leading point, the saying the right things, the being the right thing, you also have to be a producer on the field. And let's face it, nobody has consistently produced on offense to being that. And I think that there was a hope that Kenny Pickett could have become that after the way that he played in the preseason. I think that's why they voted him to be offensive captain for the team and how they went forward by that. But somebody needs to step up and do that and take charge and hold other people accountable while being accountable themselves, and not just saying, hey, that's on me, but going out there and saying, hey, that was before was on me, but right now, this success, this is because we worked for it and we got there. That's something that has to happen right now for this Steelers team, or this season will fall apart. And I know there's some people out there saying it's already fallen apart, Chris. It's done. It is not falling apart until you are out of the playoffs, because I could go back to the year that they won a Super Bowl under Bill Cowher. So when they dropped to 7-5, so many people threw the playoffs out the window because they had to win out and they had to have all these things. They had to do all these things to make it, and they did it. And I'm not saying this team's going to the Super Bowl. There's no way they're doing that. This is not the team to do that. But I don't think this season is completely lost. We've seen this team play poorly and bounce back from it. The way they played against the Niners early this season, and then they bounced back with wins. The way they played against the Texans, they bounced back with wins. They played the Jaguars, bounced back with wins. That's again why I thought the Patriots loss was unprecedented, because when they've lost to a really bad team like the Cardinals in years past, they've always bounced back with a win. Now you've lost it back-to-back games, and that's why the bleeding has to stop now for the Steelers if they're going to take something forward. And so we could talk about leadership and everything else and all these intangibles and bring these things, but if they don't do things on the field, it don't matter who gives the nice speech or people get behind if you don't make changes on the field and find ways to win. I'll talk about two things that the Steelers need to address right away that go right into this upcoming game, one on each side of the ball that play huge into this, where guys do have to step up in major situations. And if they do, I think it sets the stage for the team hitting the reset button, getting back in control of their season, and handling their business moving forward. We'll get to what those two things are here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We still have a lot to discuss. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America with the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you start watching the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the fun new daily fantasy game that everyone needs to start playing right now. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball across what's called the Specials League. It's a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce. If you have a 10.5 combo of combined 3-pointers made by LeBron James and catches made by Travis Kelce, you just say more or less on those stat projections, and you can watch your winnings roll in. And PrizePicks has a reboot policy that allows your entries to stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For NFL games and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half but doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. That's why you got to download PrizePicks today. And they don't just do the NFL and the NBA. They do college football, college basketball, NHL, so much more. Get PrizePicks right now. Download the app on your phone or go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports, or specifically go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. And when you get there, use the code LockedOnNFL, all capital letters, all one word, and you'll get a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL with code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here focusing on the Steelers and what they need to do moving forward. Let's get back to the field, because I wanted to do leadership talk because I think that's such a big component of what the Steelers are dealing with right now, is finding the leaders, finding the right tone, changing the tone of the season. but that also has to translate on the field. So let's talk about one on defense and one on offense. I'll start with the defense because that's the group that has to win football games for this team. We knew going into this season, if the offense was going to make an improvement, that's great. But the most of this offense was probably going to improve to was middle of the league, and they haven't done that. So the group that needs to hold the line and needs to be able to win the games, it's going to be the defense. And the defense past 2 weeks hasn't been good enough to win games. And as Cam Heyward said, they're giving up 21 points. That's too much. That's on them. They have to be better. So let's talk about a specific problem that Mike Tomlin even addressed himself and said that the Steelers would address throughout preparation this week. It's tight ends. And I know that there's some people like, oh, great, it's tight ends. They've always killed us. The Steelers have always been killed by tight ends. That actually hadn't been the case up until recently. The Steelers, when they drafted Terrell Edmunds, they were able to concoct a plan, especially when Terrell Edmunds was combined with Minkah Fitzpatrick. They started to limit tight ends for years. And in fact, this year, before these past 3 games, and I throw in 3 games for a reason, I'll explain why, they were one of the better covering tight end defensive teams in the NFL. As it stands right now, they are still allowing the 9th fewest touchdowns to tight ends in football. They've allowed 5 total, but 4 of those 5 have come in the last 3 games. You had 2 to Hunter Henry last week with the Patriots, 1 to Trey McBride, who just chewed them up in the Cardinals game, and then 1 to Drew Sample in the Bengals game. Now, Drew Sample was also kind of a fluky play where it was kind of just like it broke down, and that wasn't exactly like, a tight end just mossing and an unprepared defender or whatever. That was kind of a different situation. But still, that tight end production, they had kept that in check all season long, and that's where I'm like, man, that's something that you have to be able to lock down. And again, Tomlin said it himself during his press conference. He's like, that's something that they have to prepare for. And there's different ways that they could go about this. If a Landon Roberts is back and healthy, does he help with that? Does Michael Walker? I think Michael Walker has tried to help with that. It hasn't gone too well, and that's why they're talking about what they need to do. But, they brought in Blake Martinez and Miles Jack. Do either of them help with it? Or is it a focused plan where it's a team effort where maybe one of those linebackers teams up with Shannon Sullivan or DeMonte KZ or Minkah Fitzpatrick or somebody that takes it away? I think it's going to be a combined effort where they're going to be mixing up different looks to get people there. I also wouldn't be shocked if Patrick Peterson was included on that because, again, he's been putting up pretty good coverage numbers in the past couple months. And that's where I think the Steelers might say, hey, you know what? Let's move things around. He's a smart cornerback. Let's put him in different positions and see how he plays. That's something I'm going to be watching for. How do the Steelers respond to covering tight ends in this game? Because if they don't respond the right way and they get chewed up by the tight ends, and Mike Tomlin talked about how the Colts, they like to use their tight ends, that could be a big problem. Gardner Minshew chewing them up. That would be disastrous for this game on the road that they absolutely have to be looking out on the defensive side of the ball for how they cover the tight ends and how they cover in general, but especially the tight end position and how they try to limit the run in that game. Now let's flip to the offense. One, they got to be able to get back to the run game. Now, granted, they've been getting behind double digits against these past 2 opponents, so the run game has kind of not as been of a factor late on, but they still have to be more dominant there. But even if they are more dominant, Mitchell Trubisky has to have a clue to where he's going. He looked lost on Thursday night. And granted, short week, quick week that he had to get prepared for. And we said going into that game, the Patriots defense is still pretty good, even though their record is terrible as an overall team. But now that he's had 9 days since the game, he's had time to work, time to practice, time to focus. He has to be able to do the simple stuff. Take the simple things that are there. This Colts defense can make plays at times, but they are not a defense that should be dominating you. And granted, we saw some of the problems with Pickett throughout the season where he wasn't taking the layups at times. But this is crunch time. This is an NFL veteran that you're paying $10 million to be there and to be on your bench to be ready for this specific moment where they need you to come up with wins. He's had an extended week. You need to see a coordinated, focused effort from Mitch Trubisky. That's something that and it doesn't mean dominance. I'm not talking about a 3-touchdown performance like Joe Flacco gave the Browns, but I'm talking about simply moving the ball, winning on third downs more often than not, keeping drives alive. Do the things that actually Kenny Pickett did against the Bengals and find a way to keep the same drives. Move the ball, get the yards. And and also, I mean, if you go back to Kenny Pickett wasn't great in the first half against the Cardinals, but there were times they moved the ball there. But since that first half, There hasn't been that. There's been nothing like that. And that's where the focus has to be, is to finish even when you do get that. Like let's say they get back to where they were playing against the Bengals and they got their 400 yards of offense and everyone was celebrating that. But still, at the end of the day, we said it on this show, they only had 16 points. You can't win too many games with 16 points. You need at least in the 20s. That's the threshold that this team needs to consistently be meeting here. And that's where Mitch Trubisky has to get them there. Them not finishing drives, even when they've started to execute, it's why the Bengals game was a squeaker. It's why they didn't develop a lead against the Cardinals that could have put them in a position to win that game and make all of this not matter as much. But here we are. So if you're on defense, stop the tight ends. Get back to fixing that problem that used to be an asset for your defense and used to make them one of the better tight end stopping teams in the NFL before their rush of injuries at linebacker and the obvious problems that they've had. But they need a plan for that, and they need the players to respond to the plan positively and let that lead to production on the field. But on the offensive side of the ball, Mitch Trubisky has to come out looking focused and looking like he knows where he's supposed to go and everything's there. And again, it doesn't mean touchdowns galore. It just means not looking like he's panicking and scanning the field and throwing up prayers that get intercepted or should be picked sixth the way that he did against the Patriots. Because if he comes out like that again, there will be I think a chance for Mason Rudolph to come into the game, and the Steelers I think are trying to make it sure that it doesn't have to come to that because they want the guy they paid $10 million to earn that money and to be the backup quarterback that they did. If they can do that, I think they have a chance to win this game because this is not a Colts team that's truly dominant. They've been competitive, but but in this situation, you can set everything right with winning a competitive football game the same way they beat the Raiders, same way to beat the Titans, same way to beat the Packers, same way to beat the Browns, same way to beat the Ravens. Go out there, execute your jobs, win your matchups, stay focused on the game, and finish the job. The Steelers do that. We'll be talking about this team differently after Saturday. But we still have a few days to get before there. We've got Crossover Thursday tomorrow where we're going to talk with our host from Locked On Colts about this upcoming matchup. What are the Colts looking at here? Because this is a pivotal AFC wildcard matchup that could set up the playoff stakes for either team or both teams. We'll get to all that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast on Crossover Thursday. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critique. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. And find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast Monday through Friday, talking all things Pittsburgh Steelers here. We're back tomorrow with Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.